Hi, this is Kathy from My Best Year, and I'm so happy that you guys are joining us today. I have the distinct pleasure to be able to present to you Lori Rocchino. Lori and I met almost exactly a year ago at what's called the World Domination Summit, and that takes place in Portland, Oregon, which is where I'm coming from today. Lori is in Philadelphia area. And it's a summit of people coming together who are entrepreneurs, creative people, people who think outside the box, to be inspired and educated about what others in that same field are doing. And Lori and I connected because we're both bloggers and very interested in decluttering and having a simple life. And this year, Lori started doing podcasts, and she has a wealth of knowledge and information. Today, she's going to be talking to us about finding your voice, finding that unique thing that is you and that you want to share with the world, and just giving us some framework for how we look at that and how we might do that. So without further ado, I want to say welcome to Lori. Hi.
Hi, how are you? How is everyone?
Yeah, I'll type in a little question and just ask people as they come into the room to please share your name and then where you're from, because there are folks actually all over the world that have signed up. And I know that some of them today will be watching the replay versus live, but um, happy to have you here, Lori. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? And I always like to find out about you both personally and professionally. So,
Yeah, sure. Personally, I'm based in the greater Philadelphia area where I live with my husband, son, and corgi. And I like to do different things like sports such as running and tennis. And I often travel with my family, preferably to dog friendly places where we could take Hachi along.
okay.
Background wise, I majored in English at Chestnut Hill College in Philadelphia and minored in communications. And professionally, I worked in marketing communications for the financial services field and startups in New Jersey, New York City, and Boston. Nowadays, I wear many hats, just like yourself, as a freelance writer, author, blogger, and podcaster. I write for both national and local publications alike. So national would be like Success, Huffington Post, YFS Magazine, and just certain niche magazines in the local area. And I've authored the book 50 Shades of Simple, How to Prioritize in the Age of Information Overload.
Well, that's good.
That's something I'm still working on it in my own practice, but yes, I did write something on how we can declutter a lot of areas of our lives. And on my platform, LoriRocchino.com, I do blog about topics like simplicity, lifestyle, and productivity. And I also host a podcast, which you've been a guest on, which I was just really happy to have you on. So it's the Simply Design Life podcast series, and it serves mostly entrepreneurial women who want to simplify their life in order to make room for the things that matter.
Great. So we have on our screen watching us right now, we have Meredith, who is from you. Oh, no, I'm getting them mixed up. Oh, she's from Eugene, and so is Diana. That's why I was getting mixed up. And Terry's from the Portland area. So other people will be joining us, but happy to have you guys here. Why don't I go ahead and start some of the slides?
Sure.
Then you can get rolling with your presentation. How's that sound, Lori?
Sounds great.
Okay, cool. Occasionally you guys are going to see me looking down or looking the other way. We're going to be cutting back and forth, and hopefully you will enjoy what you see here. So we've got the first slide up. Oops. Let's see, that's not showing. Okay, I'm gonna stop. Guess I had to stop it from before and then start it over. Sorry about this, guys. Great. Now you can all see this. So Lori, can you see it okay?
I can see it on my end. Yep.
Great.
All right, shall I get started?
Yeah.
All right. So I am super excited to be here, and I'm particularly passionate about finding your voice, just because when I was a college English major, I analyzed a lot of women characters in literature for both modern and classics alike, and I always found really fascinating was the transformation of the main character or the heroine, how she always has some kind of internal struggle or external, but in the end always comes out victorious when she's learned to find the confidence in both her own voice and being comfortable in her own skin. So once I moved to the traditional professional world, I found it really interesting how much I had to conform to the voice of the company or wherever I was working at, and how I felt like I had to hold myself back a lot and play the politics, and you really couldn't be yourself without getting slack. And I think as a creative, it's something that you really have to struggle with sometime, and it doesn't allow you to grow. So disillusioned with that kind of environment, I did strike out on my own as a freelancer and started a blog and a podcast. And I also started associating with more like-minded people like Kathy here, and whom we mentioned met at World Domination Summit. And I found lots of support from similar conferences, both in real life and both online, and through online entrepreneurial environments, which really, really opened my eyes to all the possibilities. So this About Me slide. Should I go over it real quickly again, or should we?
I think it's been up on the screen and you talked about it. I'll proceed to the next slide.
Okay, cool. So what is voice and how does one stand out? So I had to Google this myself, and I got about 23 million results.
Oh my.
So I know so I know for a fact that voice is a hot topic. Voice can mean different things to different people. It could be viewed as an art, like singing, stage performance, or comedy. But for the purposes of this webinar, we're going to talk about voice as one's message, whether in the context of one's personal brand or business brand. It could be used in relation to content creation or establishing an ancillary blog for one's business, or any kind of content that complements what you're selling in terms of products, services, or even mission if you're involved in a nonprofit. So as you can see, we go back to, sorry about that. As you can see in the diagram here, the voice is the main message or mission. It is, in a nutshell, the heart center of everything you do or what your brand or company does. It is your why, and it could also be a mission statement or company purpose. See delivery as the outer circle part here in the diagram as simply the outlet format, so through which the message is delivered. So see the delivery as a blog post, a podcast, video, Facebook post, or any social media outlet you choose, and that would be on the digital side. It could also be an in real life event, such as speaking, where you get to be in front of your target audience. So again, it's the output of how the message gets out. And then you see the arrows out, and that would be the call to action. You want to engage with your ideal customers or audience and how you relate to them with regards to your message. So that's voice in a nutshell. The message or mission. Delivery would be like which format, digital or verbal, or the call to action. And then finally, the call to action, which would be the interaction with your target. So going on to the next slide, we'll have a little psychology refresher. You probably saw this pyramid back in high school and college. Abraham Maslow was an American psychologist who's famous for his hierarchy of needs, which are motivational, psychological needs on 5 levels that ultimately result in self-actualization. And from this, I noticed the blue arrow there. I have your true voice will probably self-actualization and esteem. Once the basic needs are met, like the physiological, safety, then there's that need to feel the sense of belonging. So you want to be with a group of people, which helps build your esteem, and then which helps you to self-actualize or feel a sense of transcendence at the top. And I think that you really do find your voice in the self-actualization part, because that's where you can fully express yourself. That's where you can either learn creatively or technically a skill that you might have wanted to learn. So consider that area as kind of the peak or a flow of activity through which either consciously or subconsciously you get in touch with what that message is. So moving on to uncovering your own uniqueness. So if you've lived your life, which you all have, you have stories to share. And not to get too deep, but depending on your spiritual practice, you are here for a purpose. And whether that's for a company or a social mission or to change or improve one area of life, you are here for a purpose. So when you think about uncovering your uniqueness, you could also think in terms of your beliefs and values, or that of your brand's beliefs and values. Other questions to ask are, what are your interests? What can you talk about for hours and hours? What blogs, books, or magazines do you read? What groups or activities do you participate in? Where do you travel or visit often? So next slide, got the awareness of your voice. How do you uncover your uniqueness? Yeah, so sometimes it could be right in front of you and you don't even realize it. So you might uncover your uniqueness through feedback. People probably repeatedly comment on something that you're not even aware of, or they might thank you or ask you for something that that comes up constantly. So I guess when I first started out, friends and family suggested that I choose a topic on like design or parenting when I started a blog. And while I don't write about design per se, there are certain elements that do provide a constant and are seen on my website and even on my communications and even this presentation slide, such as a minimalist white background and then splashes of color. So that would in some ways be like the digital voice of the brand. And that would kind of be a differentiator from some of the other simplicity bloggers, like, I don't know if you're familiar with Leo Babauta of Zen Habits, who has basically all white, super minimalist, larger text, but it's kind of like a dark gray charcoal. So that's one thing to consider. And another thing you could also think about when trying to identify your voice is Google yourself online. What entries come up? What keywords do you see? And if you do the Google Images search, what images do you see? If you want to go in terms of branding, Google, let's say Google West Elm, for instance, in the images section. You'll probably find a lot of images that are modern, colorful, slightly minimalistic, and really chic. So their branding is based on those particular traits. On the personal brand side, if you were to Google the blogger Natalie Sisson or her brand, The Suitcase Entrepreneur, you'd come across a lot of images of world travel and some of the locations that she's visited. And you'll see a lot of suitcase images too, because she lived out of a suitcase. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Natalie Sisson, but she worked in corporate for a while and she found it not really fulfilling. So she struck out on her own and started her online business while traveling around the world. And so thus the Suitcase Entrepreneur became her brand.
I like that.
Yeah. Let's move on to your quirks. The more you dig down, the better, because this could really be a good differentiator. What words do you say in your expression? Are you from the South and say y'all a lot? Or are you high energy and use triple hays when you greet someone, like hey, hey, hey? Do you have a strong cultural or spiritual heritage, or a strong history of being consistent in one activity, like sports or pop culture? Are you from Australia or New Zealand and might consistently refer to marmite, which is a food spread? Or in my Filipino culture, that would be chicken adobo and pancit, rice noodles. In our culture, we love to eat, so that might be part of the, like a differentiator. And basically, it's these quirks that can act as a sort of brand recognition so that your target audience knows who you are. So moving on to objections and resistance. So what is it that keeps most people from starting a new venture or a creative project? It's usually this thing called resistance, and it's something that's deep in our subconsciousness that protects us from potential negative outcomes like failing or getting feelings hurt or making a fool out of yourself. It's like lusting after your heart's desire and being like kind of scared to approach that person because you don't want to feel that kind of rejection. So it's usually a mindset issue. Most of these are self-imposed more than anything else, but it is something that's kind of inherent in our psyches. And so when it comes to, well, first identifying your voice and then sharing your voice, there are a lot of objections and resistances that come up, such as lack of confidence and perfectionism. I or my product or service is not good enough. I'm so overwhelmed. There's so much to do. Where would I start? Or there might be this feeling of comparisonitis. Everybody in my field is doing way better than me. Why should I bother? Another thing that comes up, and especially in the entrepreneurial world, is feeling like a fraud. I feel like a fraud. I'm no expert. Who am I to vocalize my message like some big shot? Or in my Filipino culture, it's more like as if you are somebody. Trying to do the accent. Yeah, so those are some things to keep in mind as far as like resistance. Now, on the next slide, we're going to bust all these objections here.
I'm glad you're going to talk about, how to break through them, because, I think we all can identify with some of those, the comparisonitis, the perfectionism, etc. So, keep on going. You're doing great.
Awesome. Yeah, and the thing is, you do not have to have your voice at full vision realized. You just simply need to be a few steps ahead of your audience. Or if you're in the product, if you have a product or a service-based business, you don't have to be like a superstar in what you're doing. You just have to start somewhere, and preferably where your strengths lie, and then reiterate as you progress. So look at it this way, and this is an analogy between men and women, and this is something that I've heard in one of those women empowerment conferences in Washington, D.C. I think this was like after college, but the speaker said that men typically feel they only need to know 40% of the information before they feel like they're experts, whereas women feel like they need to learn about 80 to 90% of the information before they feel like experts. So wouldn't you say that's a lot of pressure? And it's just funny how typically men tend to just put stuff out there, regardless of whether they have all the facts, and they're just more naturally inclined to reiterate as they move along. And another thing to consider is, we're in this day and age where to become an expert, it seems like you need to have a PhD or a medical degree, which you do if you're gonna do major surgery, or if you're gonna teach at the collegiate level. you'll definitely need the advanced degrees for that. But as far as just teaching other stuff, you really don't need to know that much more. So look at it this way. If an 8-year-old older brother knew how to tie his shoes and his little 4-year-old sister didn't, he would be considered the expert in the sense that he knows more about shoe tying than she does. And she'd have the benefit from learning from his expertise. Now, had he not taught her how to tie her shoelaces because he never felt quote unquote expert enough, or he didn't hold a degree or certification, then, you know, she'd never learn to be able to tie her shoes on her own. So that's one way to look at it. And then to bust the myth on comparisonitis, so you might not realize this, but people who look like they have their act together online make it look very easy on the surface. However, what you don't see are the hours and hours of practice behind the scenes. So if you've ever read Malcolm Gladwell's books, The Outliers, he researched all these peak performers and athletes and celebrities who are just killing it in their industries. And yeah, they spend a lot of time practicing over and over again just to get really good. So definitely do not compare your beginnings to that of others' progress, because it's almost similar to someone who's never picked up a racket to play tennis and let's go have her play pro player Serena Williams or whoever's at #1 these days. So.
Well, and I think social media has really contributed to that comparisonitis. Like what we present to others is often not really the full picture of what's going on. So that even, I think, compounds things sometimes.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And yeah, you don't see, like, it might look like it could be something that you see online that might look like it's under one person's brand, but you don't know if there's like 5 people behind that brand. You don't know if there's 10 people, which if it looks professional, easy, and yeah, it's really interesting how that works. Whereas if you're starting from the beginning and just want to, like, you know, try to create your own platform, there might be a learning curve based on what your background is.
Absolutely.
So yeah, and remember too, if you don't share, your audience may not get the information that's really helpful to them, and you will have lost an opportunity to help or positively impact others. When you're putting yourself out there, also try to put the other person that you want to help in front of you, and then it'll maybe make it less of a self-conscious effort. At least that's what's helped me.
Cool. I'll just think of that as, don't be the big brother that doesn't teach his sister how to tie her shoes.
Yep, Charlie Brown and Sally. We'll go that way. Okay, so on to the, yeah, and if you want to look at some of these brands, I'm featuring here both company brands and a personal brand. So some of the big companies like Urban Outfitters and IKEA did not evolve overnight. Ira Glass certainly didn't become a great radio host overnight either. It was definitely an evolution. So Urban Outfitters, it's I don't know if you're familiar, but it's an American merchandise retailer whose stores include like Urban Outfitters, Free People, Anthropologie, and Terrain. And when the original Urban Outfitters began, it actually started out as a business school project for one of the founders, Scott Blair, back in 1970.
Wow.
So him and his friend Richard Hain, they talked about creating a store that sold inexpensive clothes and dorm room accessories to college students. The two founders they didn't have the full vision realized at that time, but what they did was they started, and they knew they would be able to figure it out along the way. And Richard Hain even quoted in the press that the reason they were able to succeed is because they made a lot of mistakes, but then persisted through them anyway. And from there, they were able to succeed the way that they did. And another example would be IKEA. That company had humble beginnings in a farmland back in Sweden. The founder, Ingar Kamprad, started out selling dry goods and accessories like matches, pens, wallets, and other low-cost items in his family's mercantile shops. And with all the woods in his area, he started to find an opportunity to create self-assembly furniture and added that to his current product offerings. But his vision didn't become realized overnight. It did take a lot of time to create, and about 60 years later, it's growing strong. So that was certainly an evolution.
I love how he had the idea to not worry about language and just to do pictures.
Yeah. And then personal brand wise, we've got Ira Glass. He was an NPR host, and he's done This American Life. And I don't know if you can read parts of this quote here. And he also has a YouTube video, but he pretty much says, and if you read the bold, I wish someone told me that there is a gap. And he saw that when he started out, he had a lot of these high standards, and he wanted to be good, and he kept trying to be good, but he knew he wasn't there yet. And what he wished somebody would have told him was there really was a gap. There were a ton of hours and hours of practice that you would have to do. And again, this echoes Malcolm Gladwell's sentiments on the 10,000 hour rule, and how much time it took to get there. And to get there, quote unquote, there really are no shortcuts. And the only way to close the gap is to get through it. And then so that brings us to the next slide, which will be trial and error. So certainly expect a reiterative process similar to the brands mentioned. And this could be in terms of messaging, mission statement, purpose, unique selling proposition. It's also an evolution. And in terms of content production, same deal. You'll learn from consistent practice and from the feedback you receive. And you may even encounter some happy accidents. I don't know if you're familiar with the Simple Green Smoothie Girls, but Jada Selner and Jen Hansard, when I've had the opportunity to hear them speak at a conference, and what they said was they started a family blog, and they said it didn't really go very well, and they stuck at it. They tried different things to make it work, and they worked their butts off, but it didn't take off as they would have liked. A friend suggested that they try posting some of their smoothie recipes on Instagram, and I guess this is when Instagram first started. And Jada and Jen said that they didn't want to have to learn another platform. It would just be another thing to add to their to-do list. So they basically almost did not. Post on Instagram, but they did. And then what they did was they just kept their focus on just a green smoothie, and their promise was to, if everybody drinks one healthy green smoothie a day, then it would definitely help them to help with their nutrition, help them live better lives, that sort of thing. So basically, the green smoothie Instagram account, it gained traction, and they got a really good response from a lot of people. So what they ended up doing was they put the family blog aside and just focused on building a business, a brand, and a revolution over the green smoothies. So one smoothie a day by drinking a green smoothie. And I've actually tried their 30-day green smoothie challenge, and the recipes are pretty good.
Yeah, they are. I love those gals. Their photography is amazing as well.
Isn't it?
Very inspiring.
Yeah.
But it's interesting that simple of an idea could take off so much,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And the thing is, they weren't really expecting it to take off. Had they just had their noses to the grindstone and just kept going through it. So on the one hand, yes, you will have to work hard at your brand, work hard at your messaging, but also be open to other opportunities that the universe or whatever your spiritual practice might be sending your way.
Mm-hmm.
So moving on to communication style. Is that it? Or no,
I've got getting clear on your purpose.
I'm sorry. So if you've ever traveled abroad, the first thing the customs people would ask is, what is the purpose of your visit? So think of this in terms of your own voice. What's the purpose of it? Or what's the purpose of your message? How do you want to use it? Do you want your voice to educate, entertain, or inspire someone or a group of people? Is there a cause that you believe in that you want other people to follow? What do you want to give voice to? Is there a product or service that you want to sell? Are there a certain demographic or type of people that you want to get in front of? Do you want to build a relationship through an engaged email list? So think in terms of how you want to use your voice and those points that I mentioned as like the point of destination. Because the thing is, if there's no clear purpose, it's definitely easy to get off track. And yes, in the entrepreneurial world, you'll be moved in different directions, but certainly have a sense of like a mission or purpose, at least what the end game in the long run looks like. And then moving on to your communication style. So being aware of your preferences in communication is key, because the more comfortable you are with a particular medium, the more likely you're going to stick with it and be consistent with it in order to connect with your audience. So would you say you're more auditory or visual? Do you prefer to talk on the phone or text and email people? Or are you a more outgoing type and like to talk for hours and hours and hours? Because if you're an outgoing type and like to talk a lot verbally, then maybe a podcast, video, or live speaking events might be the better mediums for you to communicate your message or your mission, your brand. Visually, not so outgoing, but you like to write, or you might like more visuals, maybe a blog that's rich in photographs and text, or submitting to guest posts or publications might be the better medium for you. So another way to think about this is if you were to travel, say, to a new city and you wanted to visit their art museum, what are the first things that your eyes are moved towards? Are you more attracted to the art itself, like the paintings or the sculptures, or would you rather like sit and relish each exhibit one at a time and read like the background, like some of the long form copy that's like on the walls that's next to an exhibit? Do you like to hear the history of it because maybe you're more of a long form writer and might want to publish to the Atlantic or something where there's more text heavy stuff? Or a pedestrian example would be my husband and I and how we communicate with regards to errands and household chores. We're so busy with stuff every day, and that sometimes asking for one person to get the milk is not the best way for one of us to remember. So texting is the way we get each other's attention and helps to remind us to do simple chores like get the milk at the grocery or fill the car with gas. So yes, think in terms of that.
Cool.
And let's see, next. Who is your target audience? Because usually we start large, but ideally we want to drill down to one person who embodies the essence of who we want to reach. It makes it easier to write copy or complementary visuals. So in my case, for my blog platform, I have a ideal customer avatar, which I learned from one of my online courses, and it's just an embodiment of like most of the people that I connect with. So for my blog, I named my avatar Darlene, a 33-year-old mom of two who does public relations for Whole Foods and has visions of living a simple, healthy life amidst everyday chaos. She relishes creating her own Whole Foods-like organic garden in her backyard. So whenever I send out an email or write a blog post, I have this kind of person in mind, because when you're trying to write to like try to maybe like even 5 to 10 people at once, it's kind of like trying to bringing everybody's like trends together into one form is kind of, that could be really challenging. So like for me, I personally find it easier to make it seem like I'm more talking to one person in my communications. Another avatar that I have is for my freelance writing practice. And so like a lot of the editors that I interface with are millennials actually. So I've grouped most of the editors that I kind of work with, and I named her Anna. She's 27 years old. She's a hip, cool, very caffeinated editor for a top indie magazine. Oh yeah, they're very busy people, and they have to stay on top of stuff all the time. Totally understand that. Yeah, she's also always looking for the latest, most interesting ideas for her outlets. And she likes going out to cool restaurants in the city, and she does CrossFit on the side in order to burn off all the good food that she eats. So there you have, like in my case, I have two different avatars, and you can do it in any way you choose. I've heard that you don't want to have too many avatars because it can be very confusing, but I'd say between 1, 3 at the most. But if you can, whatever you can manage, would be like really helpful for that point. And then once you know who you're talking to, then you want to decide how often you want to communicate with them and stick to a consistent editorial schedule for both email and social media marketing. So let's say, for instance, you're a health coach. You write about holistic nutrition. Maybe you could do that on Mondays, so that could be a theme day. And then on Fridays, you could do interviews with experts in your industry, or you could also interview your former clients with some of the success stories from some of the success stories they had working with you with your services. So those are some of the things to think about. Create an editorial schedule, have some theme days, try to make it regular too, and just stick to it. There's no real, like, I know like in the internet world, they always say, oh, you should post like every single day or every hour. I don't know. I can't do that. Once a week, once a month, even once a quarter, like whatever you do, you have to just decide on something. It's not going to be perfect. You can certainly change it as you go along. But like for me, I try to go between, I try to stick to like one podcast a month, one blog post, and then like if there's promotions around it, you know, I'll do that. Or with my social media, I'll pick maybe 1 or 2 that I like a lot. So if you like Facebook or Instagram, but you hate Twitter, definitely just stay with Facebook and just like rock that. Because like the thing is, like you could really spread yourself thin and drive yourself crazy if you try to do all the social media platforms at once. I don't know if you guys know of someone who's able to manage it and not get overwhelmed. Please let me know, because all I know is like, you know, when you're able to like do really well in 1 or 2, then
yeah. Especially when your business is simplifying to be posting daily or hourly and doing every version of social media would be like contraindicated, I think.
Yeah, I think so. And then you'll need the digital detox.
Yes.
Okay, so let's see. The next slide is, what does your audience read, watch, or listen to? Which outlet does your audience read? And do they consume magazines, podcasts, social media, or do they tend to hang out on Apple TV? Do they like watching YouTube videos? Because where your audience hangs out is probably what's going to indicate where you entertain on social media, or where you pitch if you decide to pitch to a certain outlet or publication. How do you pitch? Well, for web outlets, you can look for the Write For Us pages, which is usually on usually like in the top corner of one of the home page.
Can you just define what a web outlet is?
Yeah. So like say for instance, I'm just gonna say like Huffington Post or Scary Money. Some of the big like blogs or websites, or you know, it could be like a or Sunset Magazine.
Okay.
You write for maybe their web presence. So you just go onto their the Write For Us section of their website, and you would get the specifications on what kind of content that they're looking for. And sometimes they'll tell the name of the editor. Most times they won't. Otherwise, the editors would be like swamped with a lot of emails. But yeah, they do indicate like what kind of stories they're looking for. And you may either have to write a proposal or a pitch idea, or you would write the actual post itself. So those are some things to consider. And if you are to pitch to a print magazine, you would actually look at the masthead for the name of the editor to contact for the appropriate section. So say, for instance, you want to write for Parents Magazine about health. So you go to the health section, look for the editor's name, and you would contact that editor. And just so you know, most editors would prefer email over trying to call them. And obviously, you probably don't want to do snail mail. I think they still have it that, like, yeah, you could mail us at this address, but 9 times out of the 10, they probably will not look at that, unfortunately. Yeah. So usually email's pretty good, and sometimes, depending on the editor, like if they're more like social media savvy, you can even like do a quick pitch on like Twitter or like if they're on Facebook. I know some colleagues who are able to get assignments that way too, but yeah, you have to be savvy about it. I wouldn't just like go there and just start pitching them right away. Just have to kind of stalk them, quote unquote, a little bit, see what kind of stories they cover, see what they tweet about, what they Instagram about, what their voice is too, and try to imagine the kind of story, like how your own voice, your own message would contribute to their outlet, and make it great for them. So try to make it a win-win. Yeah, so moving on to guest posting. Guest posting for other blogs and publications, it's a great thing because it does help build credibility in your audience and helps you connect with influencers. And the format could also be like a written post. You could also be a guest on a podcast or a video interview. So that's another way to express your voice or message, like through other people's blogs or high traffic sites like Huffington Post. And there are great benefits to this because it's good for visibility and search optimization purposes. You're able to get in front of a different audience other than your own, so that you can gain like a larger audience share, and you can certainly open up yourself to new opportunities by connecting with others in a certain niche or having a conversation on a topic that interests you. And in some cases, it can also help position you as the brand expert or in whatever industry you're trying to gain credibility in. Although for me, I am a writer at heart, so I'm more about the content than like I guess the promotion of like my product or service. I do like more of the challenge of using my insight and finding new ways to complement another person's outlet. And I also find it like a great opportunity to connect and collaborate with others who are doing similar type work, because content creation can sometimes seem very solitary as you try to do things on your own. So when you're collaborating with someone else who's like either in the same or a complementary niche, I think it just more power to you.
Yeah. I'll share with you that here we have a minimalist group, and there was a gal that came to speak, and I just was taking notes for people who weren't there. And when I went to write up the notes to share it with the group, I realized, wow, this actually is quite newsy and it deserves a blog post. So I did the blog post, not really even thinking about it, but this woman runs the Non-Consumer Advocate.
Oh, okay. Yep, I've heard of her.
Yeah, Kate Wolk Stanley, I believe is her name.
Yeah.
And so I had no idea, but because I wrote about her, I obviously had her proof it, and then she ended up sharing it. Well, my readership definitely went up related to that. Not that I was trying to do that, but it was just a natural way of doing some of that guest posting that evolved in and of itself.
Yeah, definitely. Because sometimes, like, and especially if you're in an interest in a local area where maybe like some of the people might not be in the same things that you're interested in, it's super awesome to like just like pretty much have your world as your oyster in some ways, because you can connect with somebody else who's interested in the same thing in another country or another state, that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, guest posting. And another thing to consider is since this is a different outlet, you want to cater your content to that particular voice. So I know in this presentation we're mostly talking about your voice or your brand or your message's voice, but want to look at it as though you were going to somebody else's party. So you want to be yourself, obviously, but also keep in mind their own audience and their tone and style, and what they might need. So if there's like maybe a story that maybe you're not super interested in writing about, but like it's something that they need, certainly help them out, because maybe down the line you can like build a relationship and eventually write the kind of story that you want for them. But yeah, it's another good way to collaborate. And moving on to the next slide. So if things change, that's okay. See your voice like Gumby. It's like this play animation character from the 50s and 60s. And see your voice in the same way, in that it stretches, it grows, it does splits. It's not always something that you can find in a straight line. And, that's all part of the journey. So again, finding your voice for personal brand or your company is as much about the journey as the destination. I know it sounds cliche, but it really is true, because it's sometimes hard to like even find out like maybe what you want to do, and then know it's going to change maybe later on. So it's like, what do you do? There's all these like things, and you know what? That's all part of the process. So like while you're on this journey, don't forget to pick a few milestones that might work for you, just like maybe one or two things or a handful of things that you can master, that you can conquer and be consistent in, and also celebrate them too. Like I know like in our society, there's this tendency to celebrate the big wins, and yeah, definitely celebrate the big wins, but to get to those big wins, don't you need those little things too? These everyday minutia, they might seem really boring, but at the same time, that's how you gain this mastery and become more confident in your own voice. And towards the end, we've got action steps. So pretty much the only way to get there is through. So I would like you to pick 1 to 2 things from this webinar that you are going to make progress with 1 week from now and write it on your to-do list. And I have a few ideas that you could start with. So if you're a beginning blogger, definitely pick 3 topics to start with and commit to writing or creating content for them. If you want to start a journal writing practice, maybe you could do a brain dump of all the thoughts that come to mind for 10 minutes a day. If you don't have 10 minutes, maybe 5 minutes, wherever you can fit in. If you prefer not to write but speak, sometimes I'll go out with my iPhone and just like, and if I'm like too close to all the written material, I'll just like say whatever needs to be said.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, I do that, and then afterwards, like when I'm not as overwhelmed as I had been, and listen back to it when I'm less stressed, I gain a little bit more clarity.
Mm-hmm.
Another thing you could do is research the web outlets and submit guest posts. What are your favorite outlets to read? Go to the Write For Us page and see if there's like a story idea that you might be able to contribute. Create an editorial calendar that inspires you. So, I mean, this could be as simple or as complicated as you. I mean, I like simple better, but or as complicated as you like. You can choose You could choose paper calendar. You could choose Google Docs. You could use an app like CoSchedule. If you have like a blog platform like WordPress or Squarespace, you could use it on that. You could decide on a theme for each month or each quarter, which might be tied into a particular promotion or offer. But regardless of what you do, just I would certainly pick one thing and stick to it. And then I would love to connect with you. So certainly email me back with progress. I do hope that you found this webinar helpful. You can go on to LoriRocchino.com where my website is, or just email me directly at Lori@LoriRocchino.com. Yeah, and speaking of progress, like my own website is doing a rebranding. Woohoo! So yeah, you'll see like in the beginning parts, it's not perfect. It's not going to look like those, I don't know, 6-7 figure entrepreneurs who've been doing this for years and years and years. It's just kind of like, it's basic. It's good enough to get out there. But yeah, if you join my list, you can see how it reiterates, and maybe learn from that, hopefully. So yeah, thank you.
Cool. Well, if you guys could now type in any questions that you might have for Lori, you'll see on the right of your screen that there is a place, and you can even highlight the little, looks like a quote cloud, and from there you can type in if it's a question. Sort of helps it stand out. I think it turns red. One of the questions that I had was, so you began blogging, I believe, initially.
Mm-hmm.
What prompted you to do that, and how did your own process evolve? Like now you've added in podcasting, so maybe just to share how you began and then when you made that decision to add in the podcasting.
Yeah, so I guess I actually started with like 3 different blogs even before like the one that I have now. So it was definitely a reiteration. I had the fugly blogger platform from way back. I'm so embarrassed. I tried different things and I didn't like them. So I did give it up at one point, but then I started it up again, I think back in like 2014, 2015. And I think what I wanted to do was, I knew I had a message, and I just wanted a place where I could put like all my thoughts and what I felt about like certain subjects, whether it's simplicity, productivity, or entrepreneurship. And so what I did was just start, and I did work with a mentor for a little bit too, who also helped out, and she encouraged me, like, because I remember when I started, I was just like, why should I post this? It's been done before. And she was like, well, everything's been done under the sun. So, there is no excuse. There's no reason why you can't put yourself out there. It's your voice, it's your message, it's your spin on things, and it's your experiences. So I thought, okay, so I just I started really simple, like 3 simple ways to simplify Thanksgiving dinner or something like that.
Great.
If you were to look at like my beginning blog posts from like what I have right now, they were not that great. And even now, it's still an evolution. I think nowadays, I've moved on. I think I am more collaborative. So I think if I were to write, I'll either write something that I'm either inspired about or passionate about, or I like to collaborate too, because it does help kind of bring in a sort of synergistic energy and liveliness. Because let's face it, if you're by yourself and you're just hitting publish on the blog post every day or whatever, it can get a little stale. So it's it kind of ups the energy a lot just to include other people. So I like to try to mix it up. So I do have a more diversified, for the written portion of the blog post that I put up. And then the podcast came about, I think I actually did start it, when did I start? I can't even remember when I started. Maybe I just remember that the first one that I did, I think I just did it just to get it out there and just to see what it would be like. So it was more of an experimentation, kind of similar to what the Green Smoothie Girls did. They're just I don't know if I want to do this freaking Instagram thing. This is stupid. This is another platform that I have to learn.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of felt the same way with podcasts, because when I was looking at places to learn about podcasts, I got really overwhelmed. So I was just okay, let's make this really simple. So I guess I found a podcast app here on my Mac, and I just started talking. And I know it's not great, but it's something that I put out there. But then as I started going to more conferences and stuff, I was able to actually get people to be on the podcast show that way too. So I ended up having them on my show, and that's how I was able to build connections with people too. So that's kind of how that evolved. And yeah, I mean, meeting you at World Domination Summit, that was
yeah,
able to come on. I think I'll probably branch out too in a way when I as we progress further. But that's certainly a good start.
Yeah, great. Thanks for sharing that. It always helps me to hear real life stories. So we have Terry, who's in the Portland area, and she's just sharing with us that she's become clear about what content she wants on her website.
Cool.
In the process of designing one, and that she, for one, will put on the calendar to finish setting it up, and that she'll have questions later, and that she might contact us. So I'll just let everybody know that whether you're watching this live or as a replay, you can email in your questions and I can get those to Lori and get you answers later. So know that that's an option. So thank you, Terry, for sharing that. And she's inspired to get past feelings of being overwhelmed and lacking the confidence. So that's a good thing.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And then Meredith, who's in Eugene, says, Lori, what has helped you through the ups and downs, ebbs and flows of motivation? My family and I have moved 4 different cities in 4 years, and each new city means I'm starting from scratch in terms of in-person offerings. And she's a holistic health coach.
Okay.
Or practitioner, and it gets exhausting to keep starting up again. Any tips for revitalizing based on your experience?
Well, here's the good news and the bad news. Well, the good news is you probably already have a lot of content already, and it's from your past experience of moving. You might have started and stopped, but if you actually look back, and I've done this before in my own process, I'll look at like my previous journals or like previous blog posts. So I'm pretty sure there is something there, and you might not find something right away that's going to be like, oh, this is it. I think the motivation and those sparks come actually subconsciously. So that's why I love Maslow's pyramid, because you can go back to self-actualization. So put yourself in a place where you're just more relaxed. So like if you're, get away from your family, go to the coffee shop, take a walk. And it's usually like, just notice. And if you have a spiritual practice, if you do like a moment of silence, or like if you pray, if you're Christian, or, whatever religion or you have, and just sit quietly. And actually, I'm doing Chopra's like 21-day meditation. So that's why
I love it.
Yay! So that's why it's just like something that you need to consider. It's just that stillness, because it's not going to come when you're thinking about it, because you're controlling it. It's going to come when you're not thinking about it. I get ideas when I'm driving or in the shower or in the gym. Like those are kind of like the, so I guess my tip for you would just be like to, go easy on yourself and just like find those quiet patches, even if it's like 5 minutes or whatever. And if you still don't come up with, ideas or anything like that, and there are times that I have to push myself, and I'll force myself to by setting a timer and just maybe for 5 to 10 minutes, and just like, okay, well, I'm gonna either wait for inspiration, or I'm gonna read a little bit and write whatever inspires me, and whatever shows up, whatever doesn't. But I showed up and did my work, and if the muse comes, it comes, and if it doesn't, it definitely doesn't. So but as far as exhaust, I can see where that comes from. But I hope this helps. Let me know if there's anything else.
Yeah. One other tip that I might share with you, Meredith, is as a holistic health educator, it sounds like maybe your audience is where the city that you're in, because you maybe are doing live in-person coaching with those folks. So maybe to consider whether having an online presence to continue to work with past clients or clients that could be in other locations might be an option for you. I just figured to share that. So any other questions? We're actually getting very close to needing to wrap up here. Meredith says thank you, and that makes sense, and she loves what you shared. So thank you.
Thanks for coming.
Yeah. Well, great. Just want to thank you for your time and your wisdom, Lori, and for getting out there and sharing yourself so that we could hear your voice.
Yes.
Appreciate you doing that. And just want to thank everybody in the audience for being there. It always helps us to have a live audience. And so know that you made a difference today. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Bye for now.